You are entering The Take Up, a place to gather when the film is over. I'm your host, Joshua Ray, and I'm here with my co-host and managing editor of thetakeup.com, Andrew Wyatt. Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
Today, we are processing Black Girl, Andrew's pick for the last episode in the new Black film canon. First, we're going to talk about some big silver titles at Elemental, Asteroid City, Past Lives. Then we're going to talk about Usman Semben's seminal 1966 film. Finally, we're going to break down the list and make more recommendations in the new Black film canon. And finally, we'll have one more thing. So, Andrew, is Elemental, like, I don't know. It looks like not a movie.
It's not great. It is definitely late period to Pixar slump.
Yeah.
Sort of epitome of. I have the same issue with this film that I had with the Cars movie, which is that I find it so conceptually deranged and poorly thought out that, and that seems like a weird thing to say about kids movies, right? Like,
I get
you
it.
shouldn't have to think hard about movie, but Cars did the same thing to me, which is that my brain keeps spiraling off as I'm watching it and trying to understand how this universe, where these like Aristotelian elements, air, earth, fire, water, which have like anthropomorphic people embodying those elements, how this universe exactly works. And it doesn't really make a heck of a lot of sense. So there's something conceptually off about the whole thing that just sort of distracts you in the same way that, like, if you start thinking about the Cars universe still too hard, it starts being strange.
Or the dogma of soul, or the way emotions are also people. And yeah, I get
but
it.
You know what? I think that Pixar does excel at some high concept. Like Inside Out, I absolutely love. And so I think that the idea of a high concept animated film isn't inherently bad, but you have to think about it and create some kind of audience buy-in or something. And I think that what makes this doubly bad is it's such an unimaginative, cliche-ridden story.
So what is the story? I don't get story from trailers.
Yeah, there is, like, the trailer's just a bunch of jokes, right? Sight gags. So it's a love story, I guess. The main character is a fire girl, and it's about her sort of star-crossed romance with a water boy, and it I don't even know how to wrap my brain around it. So, like, imagine the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe as explained by a 3-year-old with some like Pokemon elements in there. And then, like, and it's a movie, the main conflict in the movie is about civil engineering.
You are not selling me on it.
It's bad. It's super like corny. Like, they have one date, like they're like, they hate each other, they have one date, and then they love each other eternally. Like, it doesn't even make sense in a fairy tale romance sort of way. It isn't convincing or persuasive. There are elements that I like. I do think it has some really cool design. There's some great wide sort of shots that are sort of eye-popping of this elemental city that reminded me a lot of the more visually splendid stuff in Coco. And the character designs themselves are kind of cool. The fire people in particular are sort of, I can easily see like why the fire people took like a year of animators trying to figure out how to make like liquid anthropomorphic flame work as character design. And the fire people in particular have a really cool like architecture. All their buildings are like clay oven style, look like clay ovens. But there's some weird racial subtext in this that I think is intentional, but like they didn't think it through entirely. The fire people are very obviously presented as like South Asian or Middle Eastern coded, and the rest of the elemental people are not, quote unquote, so white, I guess. And like the fire people are presented as like the interloping immigrants to this big multicultural city. I could write a whole dissertation on how like everything that Zootopia did right, this movie kind of fumbles.
And there's a non-binary character in it. Have you heard?
Yeah, blink and you'll miss it. There's also a pair of water lesbians who actually get a line. So I guess happy Pride, but
Andrew, they're lesbians. So have you been watching the other two? Have you ever watched it on Max?
No, I haven't. I've heard people have been talking about it.
Are you aware of the episode where the male protagonist is getting cast in a Disney film to play a queer coded character that is a big blob of nothing, like a big green booger, and he has to sell its queerness. It alienates himself, and not 1 week later did we get non-binary piece of icicle or something. I love
Right.
it. You know what? Go off, Disney. Get us.
It's
What about Past Lives? Is Past Lives a better love story?
uh in a way, yeah. So this is a movie, first time feature by a director, a playwright, who actually I don't think she's ever made anything before, no shorts, no features. She's a playwright and writer, Celine Song. She's a Canadian Korean playwright living in the United States, working in New York. She wrote this very semi-autobiographical film about a sort of maybe romance between two characters. So the premise of the film is kind of ingenious. It's kind of got some Richard Linklater before trilogy vibes. These two kids who are like maybe like 12 years old at the turn of the millennium, they're sort of best friends, maybe developing into a crush, middle schooler version of a crush. Right as those things are maybe starting to happen, they sort of get separated. The girl's family goes to the United States, moves to Canada permanently, and they sort of don't speak to each other for like 10, 12 years. They reconnect via the internet like 12 years later when they're in their 20s. They're trying to get their career started. They sort of reignite whatever proto-crush they had. They have a very intense but short, long distance romance over like video calls and phones and texts and emails and so forth. And then the movie sort of really picks up 12 years later, after their sort of maybe long distance romance doesn't really go anywhere. He's going to be in New York. He's coming into New York from Seoul, and he wants to meet up for 2 days. And that's sort of the premise of the film. The film stars Greta Lee, who you may know from like The Morning Show and Russian Doll, as sort of a comedic supporting character. Here she gets to be in the sort of romantic, dramatic lead, and she's amazing in it. Actually, all the leads are strong. It's her, the German-Korean actor Yo Teo, and John Magaro from First Cow, who you may know from First Cow. All of the really
First Cow
exceptional
comes up every single episode of this series.
because it's awesome. Because it's
Right.
awesome.
I know.
No, I like saying him and other things. So it's sort of I mean, if at the plot level, the plot of the movie is that two people walk along the Brooklyn waterfront, visit the Statue of Liberty, and have a meal out. That's the plot of the movie, like in terms of like what happens mechanically. But the genius of it is that so much of it is about what's going on in Greta Lee's character Nora's head and her. It's interesting. It's a very mellow, gentle, introspective sort of film. So there's nothing about the film style that codes you to believe that there's going to be a big melodramatic upheaval. Greta, who's now married to a white man, she's not going to, you never get the sense that she's going to leave her husband for this guy. It's more about her trying to reassess who she was, the little girl that she once was, all the changes that happened in her life through the lens of this man she's only known like once briefly in her 20s and then once briefly when they were tweens, and how he's staying in Korea and her moving to Canada / the United States has sort of changed has sort of diverged them, but also they still share an obvious like intense connection. It's a very introspective film, beautifully shot, great sound, great sort of indie lo-fi soundtrack.
Is it the best film of the year?
I don't know
if anyone's heard about it. It played Sundance, and immediately from Sundance was the hottest ticket. And then since then, people have written about it as the best or one of the best films of the year.
It is right now. It is in my top 5 to top 10, I would say. I don't know if it's the best, but it's certainly a film. The longer I dwell on it, the more impressive it becomes, particularly as a first time feature. You know, it's the kind of the screenplay is really where it's at. As I understand it, that's how Songs basically sold the film to A24, which she gave him a screenplay. They loved it, and they basically gave her a couple $1 million to make this movie.
Well, they had some money behind her play previous to this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But it's really a great screenplay. It's the kind of script that really only comes from a combination of lived experience. So there's definitely like a semi-autobiographical element to it, but also a lot of like really trenchant insight about the way people think and talk and the way that emotions work and the way that we as people, like from the specificity of this character Nora's circumstances, we get some very universal insights about how we think about our lives and paths not taken and the people we are versus like how time just sort of just keeps churning forward and making us into people that would have been unrecognizable to us 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It's a really great sort of exactly what you want out of sort of lo-fi indie drama. I hesitate to call it a romance because I think the movie signals pretty early on that it's not like these two characters are going to run away with each other. There's not going to be any baby you're going to miss that train moment forthcoming.
You just said the magic words. How dare you do that? Also, don't give that context. Like, you can still spoil that film.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I do think it is a film, one of my favorite films of this year so far.
Very good.
Putting it up alongside another film that I've talked about previously, which is Rye Lane, which is going for a very intense before sunrise, like heady romantic vibe. So it's interesting to sort of lay those two films alongside each other.
What about Asteroid City?
Which we both saw, right? Correct?
We did. Yeah.
I kind of loved it.
Where is
You're making faces.
Is it in the top 5?
Top 5 of the year?
Yeah.
It might be battling for it. Yeah, I think so.
All right.
It's
my number one.
Your number one film of 2023 so far. Wow.
Yeah. Now, this isn't to shortchange anything Asteroid City is doing or how monumental I think it is, because I think it is.
Yeah.
This has been I haven't seen a lot of great movies this year. Behind the scenes, we're doing a halfway 2023 thing, and I've yet to respond to the message because I'm like, I better go watch some good movies.
I'm with you. I've seen some things I like, but it's been I don't even think it's necessarily been a slow movie year. I think I'm way behind.
Yeah, I think I'm way behind too. But anyway, Asteroid City is one of my favorite Wes Anderson films, I should say. I don't think we said that yet. I responded to it on so many different levels. Not only is it, I think, he has perfected his dollhouse aesthetic, right? But within this narrative, and within this film, it is to such great ends. Like, he's deploying it to such great thematic ends that you sit there and look at a shot and really just chew on it for a very long time, but he doesn't really let you, because it is kind of a, late Anderson rat-a-tat-tat screwball language he's inherited, and also physical comedy to set it up.
How do we even
set it? I'm gonna try. Okay. It is what you've seen in the trailer. It is about this convention of just a handful of very smart youngsters interested in scientific ventures, and that they get stuck in this desert town called Asteroid City. It's named that because early in the 20th century, an asteroid has landed and created a crater in the middle of the city. And I won't go any further there, but this is actually what we are seeing is a play being performed in 1955. And the whole thing is structured around Bryan Cranston playing like an American Playhouse television host who is explaining the background of the play that you're watching on television, but the actual film nested within it is a widescreen, Technicolor, very mid-century color-coded science fiction comedy. Did I do it?
I think so. It does share with Grand Budapest Hotel the sense of like meta nested narratives, but I think almost like Grand Budapest almost plays like a practice run of that conceit, because it's so neat. Because in Grand Budapest, it's so neat. It's done as these like neat bookends where we nest in and then back out to get this. In this movie, he's sort of thrown out that playbook entirely, and we're going completely freeform and moving back between 3, or depending on how you look at it, 4 different levels of reality. to the point where I have to sometimes stop myself and calibrate and say, now, which Jason Schwartzman am I watching here?
And that is entirely the point. This is, if anything, other than being a cosmological, philosophical, just kind of, what's the next word that I wanted? Soup of
A cosmic
big,
gumbo.
yeah, big ideas about the way we live, the way we live with each other. Ultimately, it's a salute to performance.
Mm-hmm.
And not only the kind of performance that is a profession for these characters, and some of the characters they play. I'm talking about Scarlett Johansson, who is a major star who plays a major star. And but performance as a means of survival too, like a sort of flight or fight response. It's a fight response for these people, and the artistic endeavor and searching for answers to questions and never really understanding. And I think you could wade through it and find that there are some sort of nihilistic ideas in it, but ultimately it I found it a very hopeful film about the connective fabric between us and our art.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think it is Anderson's film that's most explicitly about existential terror in a way. And so many of his films have had characters who have suffered loss. There's a lot of like orphans and widowers, not so many widows, but a lot of widowers and orphans, people who have lost somebody close to them, that informs a lot about their psychology. But this is maybe his first film that I think is going beyond the personal psychology of that and really delving into the idea of how a sudden death in the family of somebody you're close to is really just one piece of a larger puzzle or conundrum of being a human being. The idea of that there is a constant mortal terror about something you can't understand or can't wrap your mind around, that throws your whole understanding about your life and the story of your life into confusion. I don't understand the play. It's like a mantra that keeps coming up, right, in this film. And
the resolution of the answer to that is perfect.
Right. Yeah. But there's definitely something there. It feels like, so a lot of Anderson's characters in his previous films have been artists who take their art very seriously. But I do think you're right in that this film feels like maybe the closest he's ever come to making a movie about the essential nature of art, like how important it is to the human existence, which is really fascinating and done very effectively, I think. But yeah, you can't. Also, what's the other credo that you can't wake up?
You can't wake up if you don't go to sleep.
Yeah, which is great.
Thinking about so much, and trying to really, because it sounds very like Red Scare, American theater, Lee Strasberg, like all of these things, the setting that he's in.
Willem Dafoe playing the Lee Strasberg insert character,
and there are a lot of corollaries of people like Scarlett Johansson seems to be playing, like with the biographical details, seems to be playing Betty Davis and Marilyn Monroe. There's some explicit callbacks to Marilyn Monroe, and like characters keep talking about her character as she's such a gifted comedian, but no one will ever give her a chance. There's like, and of course it is jam-packed and stuffed, and maybe even overstuffed, but to just the greatest thrill, with ideas, visual ideas. The use of language is as adept as it was in French Dispatch, a film about writing and language. I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah, I think I definitely need to see it at least 2, maybe 3 more times. I do think that even if you set all that stuff aside, if you are a type of person who likes Wes Anderson aesthetic, for lack of a better word, I think this in particular is a real treat. There's something particularly going on with the Asteroid City film within the play within the film that is sort of fascinating. Like the whole thing looks like a faded
looks
Technicolor
real.
post. It looks real, but it looks like a faded Technicolor postcard from about 70 years ago. It's strange. It's strange looking.
Like the contrast between light and dark is very like low, but then the backdrop, it's a complete 3D setting, but the backdrop of it also looks like a painted matte set. Like it's so special, but it just still feels really real and lived in. That's something I always forget about Wes Anderson is his people. They are people, and I think it's easy to think about the memetization, like the AI shit that's going around and like creating the Wes Anderson aesthetic. Everyone's always in the middle. No, it's not all about that. It is about the people.
I mean there is a criticism that I hear a lot of Anderson's characters, that they are stiff and cold and not really human, and I don't begrudge people who don't like really connect to his films, because I do think that it's sort of like, somebody either connects to his films or they don't. Like, I don't know how to argue that. But for me personally, I've always found his characters very soulful,
Yes.
almost to the point of like parody sometimes, like intentional parody at some point, like how morose and soulful they are.
Well, that's two
great
films.
Great film.
Great. It's something I keep thinking about. I can't wait to see it again. Hey, you know what's a great film? The film you picked for the last episode in our new black film canon program. That's Osman Semben's Black Girl from 1966.
Joanna! C'est ce matin-là que tout commença. C'était à Dakar. J'ai du travail chez les Blancs.
Just, I don't know, maybe the best film we've ever covered. Let's get to it, Andrew.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been thinking about it. This is probably the most revolutionary film we've covered. I can think of some that I like a little bit more, maybe because I have a longer history, like a longer runway with them. Happy Together, maybe. What else? For me, this is like soul shattering and just monumental stuff, and it's an hour long. Anyway, Andrew, we're on to the last episode in our new Black Film Canon program. And first one we covered was with Elliot Collins, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then we had the sequel came out, and good timing there. And then I picked The Watermelon Woman, Cheryl Dunye's kind of canonly queer concept comedy. Do you like that? I don't like that. Anyway, and then you picked Black Girl, a film I had seen before and a film that I loved, but you hadn't seen it, so
no,
you wanted to dive right into that. Why that one in particular? Because we're going to talk a little later about the list as a whole. We haven't really done that yet. We're going to make some recommendations from it, maybe some things we are looking forward to seeing. But you picked this one. Why?
Well, the only other Osman film I had seen is his last film, Mulad, which I think is probably true of a lot of people. If you've seen any of his movies, a lot of people would probably say they've seen that one. Which I recall liking a lot.
In 2004, I remember Roger Ebert wrote about it, and had it in his top.
He put it on his great movies list. He put it on his great movies list, I think, before he passed. So, I've heard a lot about Osman as a filmmaker, as a sort of seminal figure in sort of sub-Saharan African cinema, as being one of the giants. And again, I'd only seen one of his films, so part I wanted to do with this new Black Film Canon series that we've done is sort of just do a blind pick, like pick something that I know I should have seen by now and seen it. And I think so. He's a filmmaker. Here's a filmmaker that I've heard about. Here's a film that I've heard about. I actually know anything about it. I just heard it and knew that it was very well regarded. I also feel like Senegalese and French Senegalese and Senegalese American film is kind of having a moment in the last 5 years. I've seen a lot of Senegalese and Senegalese adjacent films that I've really enjoyed, that I think have been really excellent. So I feel like it's the right time to maybe go back from films like Atlantic's Saint Omer. We talked last year. Saloum, which is a Congolese Senegalese film that I saw recently and really loved, and including a Senegalese American film. So there was a film last year, Nanny, a horror film called Nanny, which has a lot of parallels with this film.
There's a lot to this, yeah.
Nikiatu Jusu, Senegalese American filmmaker who's making horror films. So it just felt like the right time.
Yeah, Semben, I think, as I understand, I am no sub-Saharan film expert whatsoever, but just from what I understand, he's the one. He's sort of the one everyone traces the film movement that occurred around the time of a lot of the African independence that was happening in the really 61, 63. And he seems to be the one that everyone says is like the starting point for their film culture. And everything sort of spins off from what he did, whether that's hyperbole or not. He's certainly someone I'm interested into watching everything. Access is part of the problem. Mulade is on Canopy right now. Another one of his films, Mondavi, is on Criterion Channel and on a disc. But there are other key films that are sort of unavailable, either digitally or on, good quality discs out there. But this one is available on the Criterion Channel, and probably get it on Max, Canopy, wherever they have it. Janice has associations.
HBO too, I think.
Yeah.
HBO too, yeah.
On the disc, it comes with his debut, a narrative short called Baram Starat, which is about a cart driver. It's a little bit more didactic or instructive about his philosophy than Black Girl, which I think is pretty, plain, like po-faced, like this laying all of his cards out film. But it is sort of key to understanding his indictment of human nature and of the systems that we've created, and specifically of colonialism, as this man travels through Dakar and the outskirts of Dakar, and pretty much gives of himself to death almost. It's not quite as dour as that, or dour as Black Girl. But so this is a huge thing that a Senegalese man, an artist, who was a novelist, really, he was known for being a novelist, made a film. And the reason he goes to film is that he sees that a lot of his target audience is illiterate, but they respond to the imported films that are coming into the area. So they're watching like a lot of French cinema, a lot of colonialist cinema at the time. And he is someone who studied Marxist theory. He was a dock worker and picked up like a bag of rice or coffee so heavy that he broke his spine. And in recovery was when he came into this Marxist ideology and found ideas for the people and started thinking about African independence. And Baram Starat is and we should say that just English-speaking white dudes trying to say, French, Senegalese, other African nations.
Wolof, I
words
think, is the
that
language most of his movies in.
and gets the money to make Black Girl really as sort of the centerpiece of the first Black Arts Festival held in Dakar. His really his like home city, even though he spent a lot of his life in France, some of it in Moscow, and came back to it later in life when he was making these films. And it also becomes sort of an international sensation on an art house level. And when we're talking 1966, art house probably even means a little bit more than it does these days because of the segmentation of everything, entertainment. But yeah, so that's a little bit of the setup. And I think it's important to set it up because what's happening within the film is so much about the ethos, the world that he's trying to become a filmmaker in, even though it's not explicitly about those things. So Andrew, will you set up the film proper?
Yeah, so this, like a lot of, and we're gonna get into this, I'm sure, but like a lot of French cinema of the 1960s, we sort of come at this film orthogonally. Like we have to watch it carefully to understand the situation that's unfolding. But as you sit through the first 15 minutes, you can sort of grasp the nut of the plot, which is that this Senegalese woman, Joanna, who has come from Dakar to the French Riviera, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Like Cannes is within a stone's throw away from where she ends up.
Seems to be across the bay.
She's following, specifically she's following her French employers from Senegal, from Dakar, white French colonial employers, back to some kind. I get the impression that it's not a permanent relocation. It's some kind of temporary, not exactly a holiday, but some kind of break that they're taking. They're going back to France for a while. And the idea is that she's going to follow them there. While in Dakar, she was working as a nanny. A lot of this is sort of interspersed between present timeline of her in France and sort of flashbacks interlaced between those sequences where we get a bit more about the lead up to what brought her to France. So Joanna comes with the expectation that she's going to be a nanny, but when she gets there into kind of like their little apartment in the Riviera, like she's basically just doing cleaning and cooking. Children aren't even there for a long time. Eventually they show up. And her employers, who interestingly, the white man and the relatively young white man and woman who employ her are just referred to as Madame and Monsieur in the film. They're never actually given names. They're just sort of the authority figures. They turn kind of, particularly the wife / mother, Madame, she kind of turns hostile and controlling even more so than she was in Dakar. Once Joanna arrives in Paris, once she arrives in France, she doesn't allow her to leave the apartment. Have I missed anything? I mean, like, I don't want to give too much away. We're doing a spoiler cast, so I guess it makes sense to eventually talk about where it goes. But that's sort of the premise, right? That's the setup.
Yeah, that's the premise, is that she comes under a different idea of what she'll be doing. And yeah, it's interesting. This was a novella that Semben had written just a couple of years prior to making this film. And it has the framing device of Sunset Boulevard. So
right, the short story, the novella does,
yes. So she's dead. She's committed suicide. It's different in the book. I have not read the book. This is all just what I've learned from research about this film. And then you find out, well, how is her downfall? This is structured differently because you're introduced to Joanna as this just striking, beautiful woman, fashionable, modern woman arriving to France. And, there are sort of verite shots of the boat and her arriving, people looking at the camera, and she certainly sticks out. This just beautiful, tall, slender Black woman in like modern but African style dress. And it's sort of instantly off when she arrives and she starts cooking and cleaning. You don't get external dialogue of this character, you only get internal monologue of her.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're watching is, and Senben has like this style that's especially with his actors, drained of like archness or really any performativity. And so if you were to watch this on mute, you know, you probably wouldn't get a lot of what's happening, because a lot of it is just that internal dialogue versus watching just someone performing. It's sort of Bressonian in that way. But then of course you get that flashback that she was looking to get out. She had been indoctrinated in these ideals that white culture or something is something to aspire to.
Or at least that this job, this employment, was a key to unlocking something.
Something else, right?
Yeah, she was speaking about prosperity or a better life, or maybe just something not Dakar, like, because she speaks in those flashbacks, she speaks in voiceover about her mindset during the flashbacks, like in the past tense, as how idealistic I was, what was I thinking at the time. And she talks about, you know, really simple sort of pleasures, like going out to stores and wearing nice clothes and going to the beach.
And that's how she was
Riviera.
sold to it by Madame, is that, oh, you won't even be able to imagine the beautiful dresses, being out and seeing it. But she is cloistered in this very small apartment with sparsely decorated, except this key visual element in this film is a mask from where Duan's from. She actually bought it off a young child who was playing with it in the street. And
can we talk about that for a second? Can we talk about that for a second? Because I want to talk specifically about how the film introduces that mask, and because of the way the film is structured. How that mask moves through the film is really fascinating, because we first see it as viewers hanging on the apartment in the Riviera when Joanna walks in. She makes like visual note of it, and the camera draws our attention to it, right? It's only after that in the film that we rewind to learn that this mask has traveled from Dakar, from their house or apartment in Dakar, in Senegal, and that the mask was originally some kind of like thanks for hiring me gift that Joanna buys from a kid on the street and then gives to the white couple, that they then brought to the Riviera. So it has this weird sort of boomerang effect, where now we have additional context for what it means to have it. Initially, I just thought of, it's kind of like a weird colonial thing that the white people have an African mask hanging on the wall of their apartment. But then it boomerangs and becomes something much bigger, right?
But they have a lot of that. So they have like colonialist African figures and paintings. They've got other masks in their Dakar apartment. But so why does she give that as a gift? Because she's already employed by them and understands that within their home, they have all of these traditional African elements that white people still love to put up all over their walls as home decoration. She understands that that is a way in, that is to get in their good graces, a gift for giving me the opportunity to come with you. I will share with you a part of my culture. It's so incredibly, it's this contradictory process by which people stand against, but also agree to the act of colonialism because of the indoctrination. And you end up following that mask. I think one of the great shots in cinema is Joanna with her hands up against that mask. And Senben, he has no artifice in his aesthetic either. They're very thoughtful and purposeful and exacting compositions often, but there's an austerity to it. She's white background wall. You've got that mask. That's the only thing hanging on that wall. And it's her and her shadow. And she turns and looks not into the camera. It's not like a confrontational thing. She looks sort of away from the camera as she turns. So it's not confrontation, but it is an opportunity for us to be let in and to understand a little bit of her psychology, even beyond her narration. It's the psychology of, what the fuck did I do?
Yeah, what am I doing here?
What am I doing here? And an unfair placement of guilt on the colonized. This movie's 60 minutes, 57, 59 minutes long. It's less than an
Barely
hour.
a feature. Yeah.
But it has just moments like that I think are so strikingly beautiful, and beautiful in the way that they tell the absolute truth about a situation. Yeah, if you can't tell, like, I'm completely enamored. I'm ready to obsess over this man, even after having watched a documentary that revealed him to not be a very nice man at times in his life, but complicated man.
Male directors. We get that postscript on pretty much everybody born before 2000.
Well, really, to that point, it's that he was just sort of a son of a bitch, like kind of a rude, and he did, in making this, part of his point in making it was, I want to make Black cinema for Black people. I want to make African cinema for African people. There are so many national cinemas that have been weaponized for revolution. He saw it as a tool for revolution. And he specifically wanted to make this story in his story because he felt like, there's independence, there's revolution in the Francophone African countries, but what was being left out was our female counterparts. Specifically, he knew that in order for revolution to work, it's all or nothing. The failed revolutions fail because they do not understand the human rights.
And there's a thread of that skepticism towards Black African male revolutionary spirit in politics that runs through this film. It's not intense, but you can see it in there's a key scene where Joanna sort of just whimsically walks along a monument to the Revolutionary War, the Senegalese Revolutionary War dead, and her maybe boyfriend, lover at the time, kind of blows up and says, "What are you doing? That's sacrilege. Oh my God, get down, get down." And then there's just little markers, like how her boyfriend has like these revolutionary anti-colonial / Marxist flags hanging in his, he's constantly smoking, he's constantly talking about anti-colonialism. And there's this sense of, like, up until this point, or at this moment, even the revolutionary movement, the anti-colonial movement in Africa, is a male-dominated space. It's governed by, young idealistic, hot-headed men chain smoking and talking about the revolution. There's no place for women like Joanna in that world or in that movement right now. And it's not like emphatic, but there's definitely a thread of that runs through this skepticism about the way that that women like her, and her specifically, are not even a part of that conversation.
Part of this independence movement had so many strings attached to France specifically. Mm-hmm. It was violent, but it wasn't as violent as what would come later in these revolutions, whenever these men, really, the African upper class came into power, the bourgeois, and they came into power. And what ends up happening is that many of them are great monsters. There's great infighting and revolution on civil war in a lot of these nations. But yeah, and he would specifically later start making films about that. But this one, yeah, you can see all the seeds of that. He was just really aware and knew how to very succinctly carry across that point, but that point that carries so much weight in it as well.
Mhm.
There's just no other. When I think about like the films that I respect the most or I love the most, I think about the music of them, and I think about how unique the music is to me. There's no other film that feels like this. Even Mandabi, his other feature that I've seen, it shares a lot of DNA with this. It has this sort of um fable-like telling, and Mandabi's an interesting sort of satire or indictment of um capitalism creeping into these nations, and and the French influence being ultimately poisonous. And it's about a man who gets a money order from his nephew working in Paris, and then the process of him trying to cash that money order. Yeah, it's bad. But his films had this like fable like unfolding. This one in particular, it feels so dreamy to me,
Mhm.
but I get caught up in the images, and they stand in like stark opposition often to the text of the thing or even the subtext of the thing.
There is a lot of use of not only visuals but also sound and music in an ironic way, right?
Yeah,
Juxtaposition.
that's the term. It's just the irony and the juxtaposition of its aesthetic values and the actual storytelling at hand. Because there's a austerity to the storytelling and his aesthetic, but it's all very purposely designed. Yeah, this is just one of those films that feels like nothing else to me.
I mean, you say austere, but like one of the things I actually plunked down the money for the Criterion disc, and one of the things I first wrote down in my notes was as the movie starts was unbelievable 4K restoration. Like this is a movie that I think this sort of this is a great example of like, why would, maybe a non-cinephile might ask, like, why would I care about a 35 millimeter black and white film from 70 years ago? Like, why does it need a 4K restoration? If you watch this I watched this on my my new 4K OLED television, and it is
Oh yeah,
phenomenal.
me too.
It is phenomenal looking. Like it is a gorgeous film. And so like I do want to emphasize that, like, yeah, it is austere in the sense that, like, compared to a hyper stylized film, that maybe another kind of hyper stylized film, yes, but like it's a luxurious film to watch in another respect.
Yes, in its design, there's an austerity, but it has a textural richness to it, and especially with close up and the faces. Even so, there's this ostentatious moment where Madame and Joanna are like fighting over the
The
mask.
Brian De
And
Palma shot. The Brian De Palma shot.
well, how'd you know I was going to bring that up?
Yeah.
Where they're twirling, but very, call back to Wes Anderson, center frame, sort of a stillness
They're
twirling,
like holding the mask together, almost like they are
yeah.
dancing like together around this
But it
pivot
is
point.
yeah, it's very sort of stylized for this film, and then they stop, and it stops on Madame, and Monsieur comes in through the door through the left side of the door frame that's behind her after it's still, and it's just like the tiniest moment like that I think like everything comes down to power and the use of power, the abuse of power, and even just a small shot like that with these two like looming figures that are your ultimate downfall approaching from, I don't yeah, there's just great textural element to this.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about this film in the context of, so again, this is the first time I've ever seen it. I hadn't read a plot summary. I knew nothing about it going in other than the name and who the filmmaker was. One of the first things I wrote down in the opening minutes was, this is commentary on the new wave while the new wave is happening. And I don't want to divorce this from its inherent Africanness or talk about it. And I think particularly this filmmaker goes on to make some very essentially African films, but like so much of this to me feels, if you read his biography, that he spent all this time in France, that he wrote like 6 Marxist novels, like eventually he had a real Renaissance life even before he was a filmmaker. He had like, we should all live a life as rich as this guy did before he started making his first movie. But he brings all that experience. He brings some obviously from some deep familiarity with French cinema, not just its history, but what's happening concurrently at this exact moment, and brings it back to Senegal with him and makes this movie that feels in some ways, I mean, it maybe feels like maybe 5 years out of steps. It feels like 1960, 1961 film. But again, 1966 is the year of masculine feminine. It's the year of the nun. Like the new wave is happening still while he's making this movie that feels like an African version of a new wave film.
And some folks might say Nouvelle Vague is already sort of waning at this point,
right? But it's so, but it's
Godard and Truffaut, like Truffaut's over in America now. Godard's like entering his Marxist Leninist period, but it's the heat of it. In the heat of it is still there. You want a really good,
you know what I wrote down? What I wrote down was Revolutionary Road, and by that I mean David Yates' incredible 1961 novel. It's a movie. It's a novel. He made a movie about it later, which was okay. Yeah. But the novel is great. It's great and incendiary. It's a critique of the 1950s written in 1961. And that's the vibe I get from this. This is a film that's offering a critique and a new portal into something while that thing is still sort of happening or fading out. Like it's so timely, and there's something about that in and of itself, independent of everything else, that feels very radical to me.
And he's making his first films. You're going to love this metaphor. Mm-hmm. He gets the literal scraps of film from his French compatriots in the film industry in order to make his films.
And that makes sense. And the other thing I wrote down is Mansour looks and acts and dresses like a Godard character. Like that that is so intentional, right?
You know, why does that man look like that?
He's very French. And, but there's something revolutionary about that too. Not just, I'm not in I'm aping a style or an aesthetic sense, but in the sense that if we're making an anti-colonial Black film in 1966, maybe the logic is that we use a crusty old French couple who have been in Senegal for 50 years, right? The sort of the old bastions of racism and colonialism. But what does this filmmaker do? He makes them young and stylish. They read Elle. They're although I do think it's interesting that there's this idea of French culture has sort of seeped down into the French colonies. If you look, even the Black characters are reading like Elle and Marie Claire. Mm-hmm. But what is sort of the Mansour, the bastion of white masculinity? The only things we see him read are comic books and skin mags. He's not reading he's not reading like the great heights of French intellectualism. He's sleeping, he's napping and smoking and reading skin mags and comics.
And I that's such a great point that they are the people who say, we have Black friends. I have Black friends. You know what I mean? Like, we're with it. But
the Madame does not look like what you envision as like an old racist colonial woman. She looks like a stylish woman in 1966.
She looks her sort makeup, of like her Brigitte Bardot, right?
Right, her hair, her makeup.
Turns out to be a terrible racist, by the way.
Yeah, she is. But like that's the whole thing. That's the conceit, right? That's the conceit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that whiteness equaling power ultimately it's going to corrupt, and you will use it to any means in order to have your little comfortable life. And to the point where this culture is so dominant, either by force or in this method that you're talking about, in the way
cultural hegemony. Yeah.
Yes. And so through that process, you have your people who you're colonizing buying into it of course I want to go and be their nanny. I I don't even know that I want to, like, do we want to talk about the end or the climax of the story? I mean,
I do, because I didn't,
okay.
again, I
Okay.
didn't know about it, so it definitely felt shocking to me as a first-time viewer who didn't know it was coming.
So wh- what was your thought process watching it? Because I can see, and it creeps into my head, it's like, uh, figure out a way to go back home. Maybe that's the way I'm conditioned to think about that thing, because I
Right.
have the privilege of being able to do something like that.
Well, I do think there's a criticism that you could lob at it, maybe from the year 2023. You could say, well, did we really need to kill off our female Black protagonist? Like, why couldn't she just find a way out? Like, but of course we know that I don't think we've mentioned before, but sort of the genesis of the original novella is a news story. There is a sort of true to life seed that a Black Senegalese domestic worker in France committed suicide in her employer's bathroom, and it made the paper, and it was just listed as "Black girl kills self" or something along those lines in the French. So that's where the title of the film comes. That's where the novella apparently derives some inspiration. But of course, what the film does is sort of take it. You mentioned Sunset Boulevard, right? It takes it out of that noirish context where there's these detectives looking over the body of the dead Black girl and saying, "How do you think that happened?" And then we get the flashback for how it happened. It does take it out of that and focuses it more on her, but it definitely feels grim to end on a note where our character kills herself. But I think part of what the film is successful at doing is putting us into her headspace, right? And part of that is the voiceover narration, and part of that is like her behavior, which becomes increasingly erratic to the point where, like, there's something almost kind of darkly funny about the way that her employers can't even conceive of why she would be unhappy. They keep asking her, "Are you ill? Are you sick?" Like, they never even question the idea that she could be miserable and trapped. But it puts us into her headspace to the point where there is a dark logic to, like, I need to get out of the situation and I don't see a way out, so I'm just going to, like, take control of the situation the only way I can, which is just to plan my own exit.
That's I think the key to it is a way of gaining or regaining a modicum of agency and power. Is I'm going to do it in your fucking bathtub, and
which you can see that it taints that space for the white couple for the rest of the,
because
like,
it
she
ends
can't
up
even go
in
in that
paper,
bathroom.
and she looks at the tub, and they're like, "We're going back to the car."
I mean,
and then
in my mind, off screen, they sell that place and never go back.
Oh, of course. And then someone has to explain why it's so cheap. So the last 5 or I don't know 3 minutes of this film are so heartbreaking and sort of invigorating, again, in this sense of it just getting to the truth, where this fucking asshole goes to return her suitcase and the mask that they were gifted from Joanna back to Dakar, to her family. And of course, he's haunted by the original owner of the mask, this young boy, who I think is credited as the mask, if I recall correctly.
Some Halloween vibes there. He's just the shape.
Good.
He's the shape.
You know what? It's gonna follow you, and I hope it does. And I hope you.
Plus the final shot, right? Like the final shot, it definitely puts
gorgeous.
Almost gilding the lily, really. That beautiful final shot of that kid lifting up the mask and letting. Plus, there's the music of that. So I do want to point out that you talked about the music, and the part where the music really hits me really is the last 5 minutes of the film, because we get that horribly ironic, like,
upbeat,
I don't know what to call
cheery,
upbeat carnival music on the beach after Joanna's death, or just as we're learning about Joanna's death, where we see this view of these French people on holiday in the Riviera, and then the contrast with the traditional Senegalese music that comes over, that plays over that entire sequence of the Monsieur trying to, like, walk back to literally just getting off the plane, presumably, and trying to walk Joanna's possessions plus her back pay to her family, and then failing at it, and then sort of run walking out as he starts to get a bad feeling about what's this kid following him, this little boy following him with the mask. That's scored to that traditional, that very up tempo, but not what I would call like happy, up tempo and intense music, almost like a thriller sequence is done. So it's very cool. I love it, particularly that last 5 minutes uses that musical contrast in a really strong way.
Yeah, this to me is the film that I'm happy to be watching the rest of my life. Even though I guess that sounds kind of pitiful for what it is, but I think it's just one of the great movies.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I'm glad I picked it because I feel like this does, in retrospect, this feels essential. Like this feels like an essential African film.
Yeah. And we're not the first. We won't be the last to say it. I have it pulled up. I love talking sight and sound. It's my game. Number 95. It's in the last group of the 100 from critics.
That's pretty cool though. Was it 10 years ago? Like, or was this his first appearance?
They changed this, and it used to be like so rich with all of these hyperlinking everywhere. It doesn't show me. I'll find it and let you know. But it is tied with The General, A Man Escaped, Robert Bresson, Once Upon a Time in the West, Tropical Malady, another Joshua Canon entry, and Jordan Peele's Get Out. You want to talk about some sort of bookends in the new Black film canon. I'm so glad we did this.
Do we have any other thoughts about this? Let me look over my notes real fast.
A ton. I love that I'm seeing Therese Diop. There's a great interview with her on the Criterion disc. Then it's probably on the channel too. Talking about how she got involved and her, she was in art school and she was focusing on fashion and visual arts. A lot of the clothes that she wears in this, she actually made, because she made her own clothes. And the all of it is so good. The only thing she said that she didn't make was the polka dot dress. It was the first thing she shows up in. But the white with the black wavy, I love style icon. And I'm not saying that glibly. That's part of the point, is that she is a modern woman who is there's something in culture and fashion, and then when she goes to France, she's subjugated.
Well, it's presented as visually confusing to us that she's wearing that beautiful polka dot dress, those daisy earrings, the high heels, while she's gloved and cleaning the floor, and even to the point where it makes so little sense visually that the characters comment on it, that her employer says, why are you still wearing that like fancy dress? You're not going out to dinner. Like even they are confused by it, but of course she wore that dress in an aspirational way. Like this is how she envisioned that she envisions that she will get off that boat, right? And that she's going to blend in. And she both blends in and sticks out. Like everything about her attire when she first gets off is fashionable. Like from her hair to those perfect little flower earrings to the wig that she's wearing. She looks fashionable. She looks French. But also,
at one point she talks about when she arrives, people are going to want to take her picture.
Not French, right? Like she's actually like, there's this moment where she's almost looking around, like she's expecting somebody not her employer to be waiting for her, like to take her off to the new life. And the way that he's shooting her, like, is emphasizing like her glamour and her statuesque beauty. Like even the way he shoots her skin is just so beautiful. Like he the filmmaker clearly wants us to fall in love with her in this moment, and then everything else is sort of the long slow slide from that point, from this moment of idealism when she literally steps off the boat. The other note that I made here was that I love, like, again, it is an austere film in some ways, deliberately so, but there's so much richness to the details that he does choose to show us. such as the magazines that people are reading, the back things that are hanging on the walls in the background. I made a note that when children do eventually show up, the oldest boy is playing with a Zorro costume. Zorro, a famous pro-indigenous, anti-colonial revolutionary savior figure in pop culture, Pulp Fiction. So like there's so many tiny deliberate choices in what is otherwise such a stripped down film. It's really pretty remarkable.
So we are going to wrap up and talk a little bit more about the list from Slate and NPR, the new Black film canon. We're going to give you some recommendations that we have from the list, some films we might have covered, and some things that we're looking forward to catching up with. All right, so the genesis of this project, this program, was the project that NPR and Slate partnered with, specifically put together by Aisha Harris of NPR and Dan Coyce of Slate, great writers in their own right. It was a few years ago, 2017, after Get Out's great success, get together and say, what we need to do is put together a guide for people the title says, the new Black film canon, really highlighting not only from a historical perspective, things that people should be catching up with to understand Black film culture and Black filmmakers, but things that they might not know about that they are specifically fans of and are considered maybe even cult hits. But they've revisited it, revamped it. There's 75 instead of the initial 50. And there's a lot of great movies on here. Of course, the one thing I'll say is like 75 doesn't scratch the fucking surface. I could complain about no Bill Gunn on here. Like I want to see Personal Problems, got Jen Hess on here. There's just like, you're never going to be able to do it. We're just looking at the Sight and Sound list, 100 movies, whatever. That's nothing. But it is.
But they did it the right way. They didn't redo 50. They just said, yeah, let's just expand it. They should just keep doing that. Keep expanding it.
Should keep expanding it. And I don't know. It speaks to the cultural legacy of a lot of these films beyond Black audiences, that this is still sort of capped at 75, or like 100's kind of always the number.
But that's inherent in the new canon, right? The idea is that it's not stretching back to the origins of film history necessarily.
But it is.
That makes it. That would be a good companion list, though. I think like the new the old Black canon, 50 films pre 1975 or something like that.
I mean, really, but this does stretch back to the advent of film. It starts with Oscar Micheaux.
It is weighted. But let's not honest, it's very heavily weighted towards.
I think my point is just that it is apparent by looking at something like this that even just skimming the surface of it, right? The greatest of it, you can see how much more active Black filmmakers are and have been allowed, I should say, to be over time. Which is like just one thing that reveals itself from this list. Just interesting, puts history into perspective. But okay, so let's take a look at the list. You can find the list on NPR and Slate. You can just Google it. There's also link in our show notes too. So first, let's pick out something you'd recommend. I'll go first. Because I simply just want to say the title. I guess that gives it away. It's Symbiocytotoxoplasm Take 1.
This is one of my I want to watch this film.
Oh my God, Andrew, because you Galaxy Brain, you're gonna love this Galaxy Brain shit. It is you were talking about Asteroid City being like little nesting dolls of truth and performance. I mean, this film is William Graves, a queer filmmaker and Black queer filmmaker, who's like doing this sort of experimental theater / film work about the act of performance and the act of revolution, and it is just this mind meld, and it's incredible. It's on a Criterion disc. It's on a Criterion Collection channel. He's a filmmaker. There is a sequel, Symbiosis Psychotoxoplasm Take 2, that he made some decades later, that even kind of furthers, by commenting on the first film, furthers the kind of sticky thicket of ideas within it. But it's truly just an incredible film. I know a friend of ours, and past and future guest Kate Lore, teaches that film in her queer film class. So Kate, let us in. What about you? What's a recommendation from you?
The first thing that jumps out at me is in a film that I tell everybody they should see on this list is Charles Burnett's 1978 Killer of Sheep, which is a film that's actually been
I have
hard
never
to say.
seen it.
You have never seen it? Okay. It was very hard to
seen
say.
it. It
So
was hard to see, and then it was restored, and then everyone, it was like this thing, like, have you seen Killer Sheep? Have you seen Killer Sheep?
2006, I think it got its first I mean, it's one of these things like Army of Shadows, like the question of what year did it come out in the US is kind of confusing. But I mean, it's originally from 1978. It was, I believe, a UCLA film project. It was just like a student film, I think, or maybe shortly after he completed his degree. Charles Burnett, who's made many other great films, including To Sleep with Anger, which entered the Criterion Collection recently. The issue with Killer Sheep
on this list.
Yes, and also on this list. The issue with Killer Sheep is that because of musical rights issues, it's actually been very hard to get. I was very fortunate that I saw a repertory screening of it years ago. I think around the time of its sort of re-release in 2006. I also have a DVD of it that I somehow acquired from like their independent production company that was only releasing this one DVD. Now you can actually stream it on Canopy, I believe. So if you have a library card or another access to Canopy, you can watch it at any time. This is a phenomenal film. It is like, to me, I think I talk about this film the way I think you've been talking about Black Girl, in terms of like, this is a canonical American film in my mind. This is, if you want to, and not in the sense of like the greatest films that America ever produced, which it is, but in the sense of like, if I was trying to show to a non-American, like one of our most essential films about understanding America's fabric and America's spirit and America's grotty, nasty underside, then this is the film. So it's styled famously like a neorealist film. It's about this guy working in Watts in the 1970s at a slaughterhouse, and the sort of bullshit that he goes through, trying to bring home money for the kids, arguing with his wife/girlfriend, dealing with bullshit, day-to-day bullshit of being Black in America in the 1970s. It's very stripped down, very elemental, beautiful music. There's so many parts. I mean, I could talk for an hour about this movie, so I don't want to belabor it. But if you have access to Canopy, watch this movie. It's not very long. It'll absolutely floor you. There's a moment in this movie that is, I consider, like one of the most quietly crushing, gutting moments in American cinematic history. It also has like, I don't want to get the impression that it's an entirely Dow film. It also has like some of the most beautiful sort of erotic Black love moments I've ever seen on film. It's just phenomenal. 5 stars, no notes. Perfect film.
Why am I afraid of it? Like, what is wrong with you, Josh? When it was re-released, it just seemed like this totemic thing, and I'm afraid of how stupid I am.
Don't let the mystique of it intimidate you. Like, it's a neorealism. It's, if you've seen, the Italians, if you've seen it, it also has some French influence in it. Like, you will be instantly comfortable with the style, I think. It's just, and I like Charles Burnett. What it's showing us is so unique and fantastic and indelible.
Yeah, and I like To Sleep with Anger a lot too. That movie's fucking wild. Danny Glover giving one of the all-time great performances, I think.
Scary Danny Glover is a special kind.
Very scary. I'm gonna go a bit more modern than my last recommendation and go with one of my favorite films, unquote films ever, OJ Made in America. That's Ezra Edelman's 8-hour documentary about OJ Simpson, but it's also about being Black in America. and the complications that arise when you become the Black man of America, and you are also probably, allegedly, a very terrible person, who may or may not have murdered your own wife. It's both a true crime documentary, a sort of history of Black athletes in the latter half of the 20th century. It is about celebrity, but it's also very specific in its details about O.J. Simpson, and I think has one of the wildest kind of epilogue codas of any film ever made in covering the post trial years of O.J. Simpson's. Film versus TV, I don't know, fuck off, I don't care about that. It's just one of the most staggering works of the past 10 years.
Well, it says a lot that
ever.
they sort of threw those medium rules out the window and added it to this list because it feels such like a towering piece of work.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's, I don't know, Disney Plus or something. Digital purchase, what? I have it on Blu-ray. Physical media meathead that I am. Anyway, yeah, there's a movie you knew was great that I just said was great. What about you, Andrew? You have another recommendation?
I'm gonna go with not something not that obscure, but I think that I feel like I still need to direct people to it, which is John Singleton's 1991 film Boys in the Hood, which was a film that I think its current reputation is sort of that it was the first and most important of a wave of sort of hood movies based in South Central or other Black American neighborhoods in the 1990s that followed similar vibes, similar plots, similar soundtracks. But I do think that somewhat undersells how timeless and important at the same time Singleton's film is. Singleton, who of course died so young now, I feel like its reputation has sort of swollen in my mind. Maybe
and he
one
was
of my
child when he made it too.
24,
all the
nominated
more remarkable.
Nominated for best director at 24.
Child.
Can you fucking believe that?
No.
maybe my favorite Lawrence Fishburne performance of all times, and he's not even the main character. Furious Styles, one of the great movie dads of all time.
Angela Bassett doing the
Angela
thing.
Bassett.
Cuba.
Well, we won't talk about him, but irrespective of everything else, I think the thing that really resonates about this movie, I've seen it maybe half a dozen times, I loved it when I was younger especially, is that it, I'm a white dude who was not, particularly seduced by Black culture in the 1990s, but this movie and another one on this list that I can talk about, House Party, those are movies I watched over and over and over and over as a teen. And just so there's something about Boys in the Hood that really works well. And I think, having grown older now, it works for the same reason that the Warner Brothers gangster films of the 1930s work. It works because it is that kind of movie. It works for the same, in a weird way. It's I tried to get out kind of gangster film in some ways. It has parallels with, Body and Soul, boxing, great boxing movies. It has parallels with Carlito's Way. There's this, it's just a great movie about a guy not knowing who he is, being surrounded by good and bad influences, the complicated loyalties that he feels to these different people. It's timeless.
It's a great portrait of family too, both your bio family and the found
and
family.
Extended family. The people you feel loyalty with, in a way that gang life in particular muddies those boundaries about who and who is not your brother. It's just it's something that feels so specific to 1991, and yet also feels like something that could have been made 70 years ago in terms of its themes and psychological contours. I just love it. It's a film that I always love revisiting, and despite its reputation and its, he had an Oscar nomination for it, I feel like not enough people talk about it today. It's like one of the giants, and it really is.
I think it gets conflated with Boys in the Hood, not Boys. This is what
Menace to Society from
Menace to Society. Thank you. See, exactly. And yeah, the whole wave of but hood.
And there were many good movies in that current, I think, and also some bad ones, but I think Boys Sort of Stands Alone is its own thing.
Yeah, and it's also sort of riding a wave of new Black cinema, like not like this new Black film canon, right? Am I putting emphasis on where?
No,
that's
I know what you're saying.
describing?
That
Okay.
Singleton was often described in the same breath with Lee at the time, Spike Lee. So I think
Right.
that we, if you were around in the 90s, you are aware of something happening in independent American cinema at that time.
Well, there's a just like a plethora of great things on here. Honestly, of the things I've seen, I don't know that there's anything I don't like. Well, then I scrolled by that. Anyway, you bring up Spike Lee. That's why is he such a blind spot for me? I mean, I've seen half of his films, but I feel like I should have seen all of them. They're always like sort of regardless or of their quality, they're always exciting.
Yeah,
even
I think that's true.
even something like when he makes a like pure genre exercise, as people would call it, something like Inside Man, so sharp and so smart and exhilarating.
We don't talk about the Old Boy remake though, right?
I haven't seen it. Also, haven't seen Old Boy. Anyway, I'm confessing a lot of things.
Oh my gosh, that feels like, yeah.
Feel weird?
Hang on, I need to process this. You've never seen Old Boy, okay?
I've never. Nope.
No, I agree, and I think there's a lot of. Have you seen? So one of his lesser films that I don't think enough people talk about is his Million Man March film, Get on the Bus. Have you seen that?
I've not.
That is a great film, great film, and a great Lee film in particular that I don't think enough people talk about. To me, that's top third Spike Lee film.
And as you would probably expect with something like this, there's he's well represented on this list. Do the Right Thing, which is a fucking masterpiece. Malcolm X, which is a fucking masterpiece. Mo Better Blues is one
Kirkland's
I have not seen. Yeah, and so those three, Kirkland, 25th Hour, and Mo Better Blues.
Those are all excellent. There's a bunch of his films. I haven't seen a lot of his early films either. So, but I have seen those, and the Kirkland in particular is really fascinating because it's tonally so different than so many of his other films.
What about you? What are you gonna do?
The big ones for me, the big ones for me are the early stuff. Like I've never seen Within Our Gates, which is sort of their one like early film, 1920 film on here. I mentioned Symbiocytotoxoplasm on here earlier. The Learning, I've never seen The Learning Tree, 1969, Gordon Parks. So there's a lot of older stuff on here that I need to hit.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff. I mean, one of the other things about this list is that these are films that are accessible to everyone. As of the writing of this list, that changes all the time. Or you could just go buy discs.
No, but I think that's very helpful.
Own things forever.
I don't see enough listicles, and like that's unfortunately what a lot of our current cultural criticism landscape consists of, is listicles and whatnot. But I don't see enough of them do what this list does, provide specifically geared its list towards accessibility, also provide a link for every damn movie that says this is where you can find it right now, which I think is like, in this landscape where we can at any time we can choose what we want to watch and go out and follow that rabbit hole. I think it's really valuable to have that. So kudos on the editors here for doing exactly what needed to be done.
Yeah, and I mean the results, I should say that the contributors to the results are like a who's who of great film writers, but also great filmmakers. Ava DuVernay, Carl Frankman, Henry Louis Gates Jr. I mean, Odie Henderson's a great critic, but this is just a great little piece to have bookmarked and to put these things on your watch list and then fucking watch them and, learn about them like every program we do. Speaking of which, our next program is going to be, it's like we have a guide for this one too. It's all about the films Quentin Tarantino writes in his essay book. There it is, Mr. Orange. Cinema Speculation, that came out, was published late last year. late last year, early this year. That's Cinema Speculation. He's writing about a lot about exploitation and new Hollywood films, American cinema of 1960s, 70s, really when he was growing up and finding his cinephilia. And it's a autobiographical work, but it's also a work of film criticism. So we're gonna have one of our, I guess we could both call him a mentor. Cliff Fralick's going to be on here, former executive director of Cinema St. Louis, helps edit the take up. He's going to come on. We're going to talk about Paul Schrader, and then of course Andrew and I are going to pick something. Anyway, Andrew, do you have one more thing?
Yeah, I'm kind of more of a movie guy than a TV music guy, but I'm gonna recommend something at the confluence of those, which is Daniel Pemberton's new score, not soundtrack, but score for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is a phenomenal piece of movie music. I've been listening to it nonstop for about a week now. So Pemberton also composed the soundtrack to Into the Spider-Verse, which was very good. We talked about that film just a few weeks ago.
I was like, I know this name. This name's on the tip of my tongue. Why Daniel Pep? Why do I know him? Fucking idiot. Yeah, you're right. Good music.
Good music. But the work he's doing on the new film is really extraordinary. I say this unironically, and I didn't say this as somebody who doesn't reflexively think we need more comic book movies and awards movies discussions. We do not. But this is one that I think unironically and unbiasedly needs to be in discussion for one of the great scores of 2023 so far. It is the things that he's doing in here. I'm not a music guy, so I can't describe them from a musicology perspective, but the way he creates about like half a dozen different character themes that all are sort of in conversation with each other and echoing each other without necessarily doing the same thing emotionally or tonally. It's just really extraordinary. I went and saw the film for a second time on Friday. I think one of the few films I've seen twice this year, specifically so I could sort of just sit and luxuriate in that score. So I do highly recommend it. Pretty much available everywhere you get your albums. It's big enough, and I think it's been a big enough hit critically and commercially, the soundtrack that it's probably going to get the inevitable like lush vinyl release if you're into vinyl. So highly recommend it. Great, just really great superhero. I would put it in like top 5 great superhero score, specifically up there with James Newton Howard's incredible work on Unbreakable, which is a completely different animal than this, but similarly great, understanding the tone and vibe that a superhero story should have in a way that 1,000 mediocre, endlessly forgettable MCU scores have completely like just whiffed.
Complete whiffs. Complete sniff of shits.
How about you? Anything else to recommend?
Where can the people find you?
Oh, sorry. Yes, you can find me at Letterboxd at AYat76.
Perfect. I will stick with music. There's been like a glut of good music coming out lately. Over Mono album by James Ivey, a friend turned me on to Jesse Ware's album. This is like a lot of dancey stuff. There's great new Youth Lagoon album. Anoni has an album coming out. Yeah, I'm just looking at my recently added stuff, but like this, I'm re-excited about music. However, it's been 10 years since J. Paul's album leaked. Do you remember? Are you familiar with J. Paul?
I don't know names, like, so you would have to play a few bars literally for me to understand what you're talking about.
Maybe I'll try to figure out how to do that.
But you know, do anything for you.
But this was he had a couple of singles, BTSU and Jasmine, before in 2013. I remember the day this album leaked online and everyone was crediting it to him. And suggesting that maybe he had put it out himself because it'd been such a torturous journey for this album to come out, and everyone was ecstatic over this thing. Turns out someone stole his laptop, put his album out there on the internet,
Oh my
and
God.
it became a critical sensation. And it's just a really magical piece of pop music. The leaked version was the only version that was out for a very long time until he put it out himself as leaked 413 parentheses bait ones. But it's still just one of the great records, I think, of the 2010s. It contains the two singles that I mentioned. It also has one of the great songs of the 2010s. That's track 2, or Straight Out of Mumbai. His Indian producer and singer-songwriter, but he's also all of his music's very sample heavy, but it's also very seductive and danceable. And I listened to it again yesterday and was like, 10 years of this album? Should I write
so I have
a
to
little
ask.
anniversary piece for Pitchfork?
Yeah, you should. So I have to ask, like, just as because I'm always interested in these ideas of distribution and commercialism in the 21st century. So do we know if he ever sort of recovered financially from that leak? Like, was he able to
He
recoup
couldn't
from sales?
He couldn't have. He's also someone who's notoriously a hermit. Like, he has since released, I believe, 2 singles, or a single with an A and a B side
In 10
since
years?
2013. And he also
Wow.
recently played Coachella for the first time, and it was a huge deal because he's not someone who performs live, and he does some producing. I'm not really familiar with the sort of outreach that he has.
JD Salinger vibes here.
It is very much that of like indie music on the internet in the 2010s. It is very JD Salinger. But it is available to stream. That's J. Paul's leaked 413 bait ones.
So why
Also,
are you revisiting it? Because it was just recently released, or this is just an idiot, like you just happened
nah,
to
that shit popped up and I was
rotation?
like, I'm gonna listen to that whole album. Track 2 is like one of my most listened to songs ever, I think, and it's just like this burst of joy. Yeah, if you're a DJ, please put that on so that I can, and I'm talking loudly so my boyfriend hears it, who is a DJ. And I'm Joshua Ray at Crispy Retinas all over the socials. I'm thinking, which ones am I on? Letterboxd, Instagram, Twitter. But you can find all of us at the Take Up STL all over social media. And of course, go read our words. Kayla McCullough just published a feature on the use of the song Blue Moon in film.
Feature.
And it's just, of course, another banger from McCullough. Yeah, and that's the take-up.com. The next time you hear from us, Cliff Freilich will be with us to talk about a couple of films from Quentin Tarantino's pseudo autobiography film essay. You know, how do you describe his work? So it'll be a good time for us to talk about film criticism, film as criticism, and QT, of course. And yeah.
The only people who love navel gazing more than Tarantino himself are film critics, right? So
Right,
we love talking about ourselves.
Oh, and I can't wait to talk dish on his supposed last film, The Movie Critic.
Yeah.
You seen Tweedle? All right. Oh, until then, support your local film criticism.